Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France, of course. You good old boys in Canada, we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free, in the home of the brave, on a beautiful April the 6th, 2020. Ground of the Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, it's great to be back with you. It seems like I've been gone forever. But first and foremost, I want to give thanks and praise to all the healthcare workers in America. This horrific disease, COVID-19, that America and the world has been stricken with, I became one of the victims of that, Charlton. And I was hospitalized for several days, and I still haven't recovered completely. I lost a lot of my strength. I lost a lot of weight while I was hospitalized. But I want to thank those hospital workers and those first responders that are out there on the line every day, Charlton, tirelessly, taking care of America, taking care of the people around the world, putting their own health at risk, Charlton, because they have families to go home to.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, after working 12 to 24 hours on a shift and having to care for those people that are in dire need medically. But that's what they've signed up for, Charlton. And we don't give enough praise to these people around the world, or even in this country. As we sit around and we listen to your president talking about people need to praise him for what he's doing, he would never do what these healthcare workers are, Charlton, and I thank them every day. I owe my life to them for what they've brought me through, Charlton, and gotten me to this point. And every other American out there, Charlton, that they have helped and saved. I know we've lost thousands of lives here in America.
Yeah.
And we're here, everyone talks about sports and what sports does, and it's a gravitas to that for everybody to be a part of and what it means to everybody. But without health and without these healthcare workers, Charlton, we have no sports. And these people are doing a wonderful job every day, and I can't thank them enough, and I can't praise them enough. All of God's speed and wishes to these people, Charlton, every day.
Wow, every day, Big C. I was saying you were digging for gold, but I know sometimes life is a lot more serious than that, and I am glad that you're making a speedy recovery. I want to say, and I want to talk more about that too, I want to say Big C Sports is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic from 3,000 miles away, and he will do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with that. Big C, I know as we talk about, in fact, you're the one that said, let's start doing this Veterans Crisis Line for our military veterans and their loved ones and anybody who needs any kind of help. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and hopefully they can get some help. Big C, I want to also amend what we're saying. So not only for military veterans and civilians, for people dealing with anything, and you were just mentioning what you've been dealing with too, why is that number even more important to you, Big C? Your thoughts?
Charlton, it's important to every American these days. I mean, we've always paid homage to our great military veterans. But when we think about the stay-in-place orders that have been implemented across this country, we think about this country being shut down from employment, from education. You think about the depression that people are going through, Charlton. It seems like a vacation that first week. But after that, you're stuck in a situation that Bill Murray did a movie years ago called Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
That every day you woke up, it was the same thing going on. That's what we're living in right now in this country, is a Groundhog Day. But it's a Groundhog Day with a pandemic against the health of American citizens, Charlton, that our national government has been dishonest about. that they've lied and misled the general public about, not been forthcoming.
Yeah.
And as we look at this from Americans' perspective, Charlton, when you don't have a job, your children don't have an outlet of education, you think about the stress and the pressures that build up in your home, that you're looking at the same thing every day and you don't have those mental and physical outlets to deal with.
Yeah.
You need somebody to talk to beyond the people in the confines of the walls that you're living in. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, is there not just for suicide prevention, Charlton, but to help people through crisis.
Yep.
And we're living in a crisis time in America. This is not a great time. People talk about getting back to normal. America doesn't know what normal will ever be again, Charlton. This is when we talk about, we've seen world wars in this country, and people say, get back to normal.
Yeah.
You're not getting back to normal in a matter of a month or 2 or 3 months, Charlton. We're talking about a lengthy amount of time in recovery in this country. I know people keep talking about economics. We have to talk about mental recovery in this country before we can talk about anything else.
Yeah, that's very true. And everybody wants to get back to work, but what if the work is not there? I know we all gotta just do our part. I want to talk to you more about that too. I want to mention, hopefully, depending on what Governor Gavin Newsom says, and just like Big C, science will determine everything that happens. Looking forward to a real estate show in the spring of 2020, if that's possible. Looking to recruit 100 real estate brokers to put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's, just like car dealerships, just like sporting events, if they should come back. And so looking forward to doing that. I want to delve back into something that I was talking to you about before, because I know a lot of times this is what real talk is. And so you're saying that this is not a Democratic hoax, but you're dealing with Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, we have a president, and I remember when my oldest son was young, and there was this movie that he would watch all the time. He could resonate it from any place in the house. It was called The Lion King.
Yeah.
And ironically, he's the same color the guy that's sitting in the Oval Office right now, Charlton.
Yeah.
I mean, he has to be dishonest to the American public because his base has become accustomed to that.
Yeah.
When you denounce the experts, Charlton, daily, and you don't want them to speak on television because they don't go along with your scenario, because they are career experts, Charlton. They're scientists, they're doctors, and they're not in the business of lying to people. They're in the business of being honest and getting people healthy.
Yeah.
And when your whole life has been based on lies, Charlton, and you're the commander-in-chief of the most powerful country in the world right now, and you cannot be honest with its citizens, and this is the fault I find in all media.
Yeah.
Whether it's sports, whether it's mainstream media, whatever it is, Charlton, the dishonesty of the media by allowing this individual to get away with the lies that he's telling throughout this pandemic, because every day he's putting American lives at risk by being dishonest, whether it's about medication, whether it's about testing, whatever it is. Just be honest with people. I mean, we are knowledgeable people in the world and even in the U.S.
Yeah.
Honesty is something that this country was built upon, Charlton. And if you're honest with people, it's like I used to hear when I was, a kid, you get more flies with sugar than you will with that other substance that comes out of the back end of a horse.
Yeah, I understand. See, that's very true. I want to just add, and I love listening to a lot of media people. I mean, from Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Chris Cuomo, all of them, Don Lemon. I still go back to Bernie Shaw when we were going through the Iraq War, and I used to stay up all throughout the middle of the night listening to the truth. And sometimes, so I ask some of my media brethren that just have one eye open, one ear open, are you willing to go home to your children and let them get sick because you're saying you want to believe what POTUS is telling you, when he was saying that by Easter we'll all be having Easter Sunday together and going to our churches and cathedrals? Well, he didn't tell that to the Pope, because they're having mass to empty churches and empty cathedrals in Rome and all over the United States, really. So I want to get your thoughts on this. What is it about some people, and I mentioned Hannity and Rush Limbaugh, they will let a lie go so far that it even puts people who listen to those knuckleheads, it puts their whole family in jeopardy. Are you really thinking that people are willing to sacrifice members of their family just so they can be in line with POTUS? Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, they're willing to sacrifice members of society. I don't know if they're willing to sacrifice members of their family because they have health care. You have to look no further at this administration, Charlton. They were asked 2 weeks ago, to reopen the Affordable Care Act sign-up date, Charlton, where you had a limited time that you could sign up. I believe it ended in November.
Yeah.
They were asked to reopen the Affordable Care Exchange, Charlton, so people could sign up for health insurance. The administration said no.
They said
Vice
no.
President Mike Pence said, well, they could go on the government exchange and look for private independent insurance. If you have a pre-existing condition, Charlton,
Yep.
you're not going to be able to get health insurance. That's what the Affordable Care Act is for. But because it says Obamacare to it, Charlton,
Yeah.
they don't want to open it up because they don't want to let people think that Obama is still helping American citizens out.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking that very salient question. Are people willing to let their family members get sick because they want to please POTUS? And the answer to that is some of them, yes, because they will keep their. My heart, number one, I've been praying for you, Big C. I didn't know what was going on, but I've been praying for you anyway. Like I've been asking a million pastors to pray for things and pray for science also. But I gotta just bring this point up because.
But I understand what you say by prayer, Charlton, and it's great to have faith.
Yeah.
But you have to understand what's the difference between faith and the difference between intelligence.
Yeah.
Because if faith is what gets you through, that means that you'll walk out on the ledge of a building and jump off and have the faith that you'll be caught before you hit the ground.
Yeah.
Intelligence will make you believe that that's not going to happen. It's great to believe in faith, but you have to understand the science, the life of science and logic, Charlton, and reality.
Yeah.
It's great to pray for people, but you also have to have the intelligence to believe in science and where science directs you, not where your faith directs you, but to where science directs you, and follow that. Because everybody that has been sick, Charlton, that is lined up in these hospitals, these healthcare workers, they're not sitting there praying, Charlton. They're dealing with the due diligence of work every day. And I'm not telling anybody to drop their faith of what they believe.
Right.
But you have to believe your faith is where that hospital is, where that healthcare worker is, where those first responders is. That's where your faith has to lead you.
Yeah, and that's very well said. I'm still going to pray that my doctor is lucid enough when he does his thing. But I love that point because I think in Georgia, there's a governor of Georgia, and he had just, I believe it was today or over the weekend, that he had taken off the ban that they had on public gatherings and letting people go out and interact in large mixing, saying that you can go to the beaches. I think his name is Governor Brian Kemp. He says the beaches are open even amid the coronavirus pandemic and shelter in places in California and most, I think 90% of the country. So, and a lot of the pastors down south, they were holding congregations saying that they have faith that God will save them, yet when they get sick or the congregation gets sick, they're not going to the church, they're going to the hospitals. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you have to understand, what's the biggest thing that goes on in the South? College football.
Yeah.
And when you think about the states that have not put in the stay-in-place order, the last states to do that have been the southern states, those southern states that house the SEC football teams.
Yeah.
Those governors, Charlton, has put the biggest business in the South in peril. Think about that. College football is not professional football, and I don't know why people think they get paid also, so it's under the money under the table professional football.
Yeah.
But when you think about this, if universities and the education system is shut down because of this stay-in-place order that these governors refuse to put in place right away, and all the schools are closed up in the South.
Yeah.
Whether it's general education, whether secondary education, universities, Charlton, they're all shut down. If the universities do not reopen, that means that college football will not be played, Charlton. So these southern governors in all of the Jim Crow states, and there's 13 of them, that refused to put in the stay-in-place order initially, Charlton, when Dr. Fauci called for it.
Yeah.
So you're talking about putting college football in peril. Because of those governors, Charlton, those 13 governors, college football may not be played this year because if you can't open up the universities, then you cannot play college football.
Well, Dabo Swinney, I think they've been in 3 of the last 4 national championships. He's saying, we're going to get our boys ready. Like, what boys? He wants his boys. Dabo Swinney wants his boys to get out there and play football as opposed to science and understanding that science will tell us when. And this is what I'm going to get your thoughts into.
He'll have no say-so in this, Charlton. This comes down to a national order and even a state order. If the universities don't open, and that you have to understand, college athletes are under the jurisdiction of the state.
Yeah.
They are semi-employees of what college athletes are, Charlton, because they're on scholarships from the state. That's where they're funded from.
Yeah.
And those scholarships are funded through the university that receive state revenue. So if the kindergartens are not open, Charlton,
yep.
the secondary schools are not open, the high schools are not open, the colleges are not going to be open, Charlton. I have kids that are in college, and they're doing stuff at home on
yep.
the computer because the university is closed. They were kicked out of school over a month ago.
Yeah.
And so if those colleges don't reopen, and I know that they've been told that it's going to be closed the rest of the year.
Yep.
That means that the athletic departments will be closed the rest of the year.
Well, this is what I want to get your thoughts in, because there's a Governor Kemp out of Georgia and then Dabo Swinney's out of South Carolina. But the executive order, this is what he said. It allows exercise with social distancing on the beaches, and that's the state's Department of Natural Resources prohibits beachgoers from using chairs, tents, and umbrella until April 13th. It's like they don't even watch the news to hear what science is saying. Are you saying there's that much of a separation between these faith-goers and what science says? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I heard some stupidity from the governor of Georgia. You said his name, Brian Kemp.
Yeah.
Where I believe a week ago, before he put the stay-in-place order in the state of Georgia, he said he was unaware that this pandemic was contagious.
Wow.
So this is a governor of a state, a duly elected official, who said he takes his lead from Washington, D.C., your president there, POTUS.
Yeah.
In Washington, he said he takes his lead from him, as well as DeSantis in Florida said he takes his lead from the president, that this pandemic, he did not feel that it was a danger to the citizens of their states.
Wow.
And so when you have duly elected officials, Charlton, sitting there saying that they didn't realize that it was a health risk to the general population, but I guarantee you this, Charlton, they didn't have their children out in large gatherings. I can guarantee you that.
Yep.
They kept them in home, under self-quarantine in their own homes, but they're saying the general public was at no risk. The reason why, because those are Republican states that the president won during his election back in 2016.
Yeah.
So they didn't want to do anything to upset him, so they would put their general population at risk trying to appease the president.
That's interesting. I want to go up north and ask your thoughts on this, because up north, the Chicago mayor, her name is Lori Lightfoot, and she went on to Soldier Field in Chicago, home of the Chicago Bears, and she made an announcement, Big C, and the announcement was that it was difficult for any sports fan to misinterpret. Like, we are not playing. I was just saying, when you were out dealing with your situation, I was saying about the last week or so, there's the people that I listen to at times, because I love the sports business. I love listening to what other brethren are saying also. And there are people that would have call-ins going, I can't believe you guys are talking about this thing. I'm tired of hearing about coronavirus. Can't we just play sports? So then you have a major city, Chicago, I believe, is number 3 size in the country, and she's telling these knuckleheads that sports is not going to happen until science determines that we can play ball. So what is the difference, in your opinion, between the thinking of a northern city and a mayor and then the governor of Georgia? Big Z, your thoughts?
Well, one of them is salient, Charlton, that's the difference.
Yeah.
When you think about somebody who has been through the crisis of America, who has understood hardship their entire life. You think about this in America. As we talk about the difference in society, when we talk about being African-American versus being white in America.
Yeah.
When you're African-American, Charlton, you can have a job, but your second full-time job is being African-American, okay?
Yeah.
You have 2 full-time jobs. When you're white, you have 1 job. That's just being white, Charlton, period.
Yeah.
But as an African-American, you have to deal with the struggles every day in life. And being in a large city like Chicago, understanding the health plight of the community and the area that you're in versus somebody who has a political agenda. And that's what Americans need to understand when they go to the ballot box next time. Who had a political agenda in taking care of their health? I know we all want to have sports in America because it is a great relief.
Yeah.
And as we look at times now in America, we're going to have a lot of domestic violence. We're going to have a lot of abuse going on. We're going to have divorces that occur, Charlton, because there's no outlet. You're stuck in a house with somebody you thought you liked and you realize you really didn't like them all of this time. That, they weren't the person that you were after spending a couple of months with them every day. And so to have somebody who is prescient enough to understand that sports is not the be-all to end-all.
No.
It is a great outlet in society and around the world. We did a show last month before I fell ill. And we talked about, and you said that NBA players wouldn't stand for it when I said that owners would exercise the nuclear option.
Yeah, that's right.
And would not pay players.
Yeah.
And you said, LeBron James wouldn't stand for that. And I said he has no choice. He's this thing that's called an employee just like everybody else in America.
Yeah.
And he's an employee. He's an at-will, at-work employee. If he doesn't want the job, he can quit and go find that equal amount of pay somewhere else.
Amazon.
But you have to understand that when you have people that are knowledgeable, that are looking out for the welfare of everybody, not just a sports fan, but the general population in their city and in their state, those are the people that we have to pay attention to.
And I love that thinking, too, because I know even in our platform, the way we do our show, we don't have there's no speaker in my ear telling me what to say or telling you what to say. There's no teleprompter. But the platform that we started with in 2015, it's like people are doing it now. A lot of smart people are anyway. And I want to just finish up on what she said, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, when she discussed stay-at-home initiatives, Big C, from an empty Soldier Field. She talked about the sports teams in her state, the Bears, the Blackhawks, the Bulls, the Cubs, the Fire, the Red Stars, the Sky, and the White Sox. They have agreed to use, this is what you and I have been saying, and why I have such enmity for some of our other brethren prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. They wanted to use their platforms for athletes, Big C, to encourage residents of the city and surrounding areas to comply with stay-at-home restrictions. Like Laura Ingraham, your friend from Fox, that says shut up and dribble, a lot of smart people are actually doing the same thing that we started doing 5 years ago. And all I'm doing is saying we pat ourselves on the back for being prescient enough to know that you don't have to wait till the house is burning to say get out when it's burning. That make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, what we're looking at now, Charlton, is everybody saying, okay, when the games are going to be played again? Who gives a damn about a game being played again, Charlton?
Yep.
No athlete wants to go out and play a game in an empty venue. That is all about marketing and money that people are trying to say, okay, if we put on the event, then you have to pay us.
Right.
Fans, give athletes energy. Athletes derive energy from fans. You play the game for the fans. And I know there's been all kind of talk about all type of different scenarios of playing playoff games, starting seasons, and all of that stuff. Charlton, I'm of the realization right now that sports may be scrapped for 2020.
It probably will be.
I'm getting into that mindset. I know that the next big thing coming up right now is the NFL draft.
Yeah.
The NFL draft is going back to what the NFL draft used to be when I was out of college. They didn't have these big grandstand events in some city with all the electricity and all the gala going on, Charlton. It was held from the team's facilities on the phone.
Yeah.
That's how the draft was held when I came out of college.
Yeah.
It's going back to that. It's going back to normalcy, Charlton, to what was the old-time action. And the draft needs to go on because it is a sports release. And that's what the draft does. It's just like when people criticize NFL free agency. NFL free agency had nothing to do with the change of life and environment in the NFL. It was just guys changing jobs.
Yeah.
Just like anybody else. Were you going to criticize somebody else for getting a job with a new company? Say if somebody left, United Airlines and went to American Airlines, were you going to criticize them for doing that because they changed companies? No. I mean, that's all it is. You're seeking a better livelihood just like anything else. And so that's part of e-commerce of America. But still, even in free agency, Charlton, none of those deals are guaranteed because none of the players can take physicals.
Yeah, I mean, life's going to go on. We've had stoppages before, but never anything like the COVID virus. I want to ask your thoughts on something before we come up on the Big C pause, which everybody's doing the pause now. I'm listening to everybody saying, well, they're going to take a pause and be back in a moment. But can Major, and this is, I know the answer is yes. So I want to get your opinion, because I know sometimes you Southern boys think different, Big C. But can major sports survive the coronavirus pandemic without teleprompters telling people what to say? They're saying revenue is down like 80% by many of our maven sportscasters now. I'm noticing more and more that when I go to turn on a sporting event, I'm watching replays of games played back in the 1970s and 80s and 15 years ago. I think even I did a tribute to Tiger Woods as a championship player and one of the golfers, the best golfers the world's ever seen. And so that was Friday's show. And now the mothership, they're doing the Masters like every day as opposed to having people talk about it live. You could just put in your VCR, if you still have those, and watch them. Is sports in jeopardy of falling off that big cliff? Big C, your thoughts?
No, sports is not in jeopardy. Sports is just like the mailman. It's going to be there every day, Charlton, that
Yeah.
they run 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Sports run 7 days a week. What we're right now is in a trying time in sports because there are no live sports to watch. This is the reason why people have DVRs and, as you say, VHS tapes,
Yeah.
Charlton.
Yeah.
I was going to break out mine, in the next couple of days and go back and reminisce from the
You still have a
ancient
machine?
years, blow the dust off the boxes. But this
Yeah.
is the reason why we have it. I mean,
Yeah.
sports, there's always been highlight shows. Even when you turn on a show during the sports season, Charlton, those are not active times. Those are highlights of what's already been played. So
Yeah.
what they're doing now is nothing different than what they do on a daily basis, regardless throughout the year, 365 days a year, Charlton.
Yeah.
It's just that they're not showing the sports from that day or the day before. They're showing sports from previous times.
Yeah, and I love this business, and I know the reason that I love it is for the reason that a lot of people right now are missing it. I know there's obstacles when you don't have the content. You really got to know. That's one of the reasons I appreciate talking to you. Whether it's about anything, I mean, even when I'm talking to you, whether it's sports or just talking about things in life, we don't need a script. We just do our thing. And that's what I love about life. And the more I do this, and I'm talking to sponsors that reach out and having, certain proposals they put out there, there's a lot of people, they really can't go and live in this business without somebody putting a newspaper or a paper or a script in front of them or that thing in the ear. I'm seeing right now, there's a lot of people. If they didn't have that, they wouldn't be on TV, Big C, or radio. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you look at the majority of people on television now talking, they're not sports broadcasters. These are news broadcasters that can read, and they brought them into the sports station because of their articulation, not their knowledge. I mean, you can tell a monkey to turn a light switch on and off, and he'll do it.
I've tried that.
Same thing as you put a teleprompter in front of somebody who can read. You can put a fifth grader in front of a teleprompter and slow it to his reading pace, and he'll articulate the whole script that you put up there. But as we look at the world of sports now, and you look at the people on television that's trying to emulate it back to you, they're telling you from highlights that people have told them about. Nothing that they lived. And as you sit up and you talk about it, I think it was last week or whatever, when they talked about the greatest college basketball player of all time. And I think you and I did a show on that before I fell ill. And we went down, I think it was like the 13 top basketball players of all time in college basketball. And I know several of them were on the list that they talked about. And we talked about the greatest 2 basketball players of all time in college basketball. Number 2 was Bill Walton. Number 1 was Lou Alcindor. Because of the accomplishments that those men did in college, Charlton, has never been duplicated. And we talked about Walton would have been the best if not for Lou Alcindor. Because of what those men accomplished. They weren't about the highlight era, Charlton, that everybody sees on television now and wanted to vote on and said, no, this guy, because I'm a fan to his as a professional basketball player, that meant he had to be the greatest basketball player of all time. When I think about Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Charlton, he's never in the conversation of the greatest of all time. Here's a guy just like with Bill Russell, a couple of state championships when he was in high school at Powell Memorial in D.C. 3 NCAA titles at UCLA, Charlton. 3 college basketball player of the years, Charlton, while he was at UCLA. And here's a guy that lost 2 games while he was at UCLA, Charlton. And even as a freshman, he could not play. They changed the dunk. They took the dunk out of basketball because of him. And when you think about, because he was such an aloof and intelligent individual, that he did not embrace the media, nor did the media embrace him because he was so intelligent. He could not play the dumb jock game. This was a man who was very salient in his time. He was well beyond the years at his age at that time, and even now, Charlton, he's one of the most intelligent men that you can ever sit down and have a conversation with. If you sit down with Kareem, you have to bring everything you got in your arsenal to sit down and hold that conversation, because he's going to take you in places that you thought was the dark side of your life from his intelligence.
He's a very...
And so when I look at the dumbness of these programs saying, well, Michael's the greatest basketball player of all time in college.
Right.
Who in the hell were you comparing him with? Who's the dummies doing the voting?
Yeah.
Go back and get some people that are 60, 70 years old, 50 years old, and let them vote.
Yeah.
And find out who the greatest players of all time. And that's what we have now in the sports shows that we have. You know, tell us what you want to hear.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. They can't give you knowledge or expansion of, you know, insight of a sport.
Yeah.
They're asking you to tell them what to tell you. So what really is their role now in television and radio? To sit there and it's the monkey turning on the light switch,
Big C, let's take the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. When we come back, we're going to find out, can a monkey really turn on the light? Big C, we'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts, the app that I really love, by Google. And Alexa, just say Google, or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic from 3,000 miles away, even recovering from COVID-19, and he'll still do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate that. Launching a real estate listing show. If Gavin Newsom said it's okay to do open houses again in the spring of 2020, the goal is simple. Recruit 100 real estate brokers, list their properties on TV. They can do it. McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. And if Dabu Sweeney's right, college football will kick off without a hitch to Big C. That's all fair in love and war. I want to ask you one more thing on what you talked about. And again, I'm not being critical of anybody, but I'm wondering how some people can make over $1 million a year, and without a teleprompter, they're like driving in the night blindfolded with no lights, and they're giving them that money. And when they really call, when the floods come and the winds blow, they run and hide, and they're showing you replays. And I just wonder, who says they're worth several $1 million a year? It doesn't make any sense to me. So, but before I get into this thing about POTUS, I really want to ask you, because right now, I want to just say to all of my sports brethren, and many of them that would criticize me personally for being too political on your show, man, now all of them are doing it. And the knuckleheads that can't do it, they're not even on the air anymore. It's amazing when you don't read more than a sports newspaper section. So with the major networks, the lack of games projected to lead to ratings decline as much as 80%. If the ratings are down 80%, that means the money's going to be down next. And that's why I'm asking you, do you think we'll really have a bounce back? And if so, I don't think the networks are going to want to pay several guys millions of dollars when they can't even talk and they don't have a teleprompter. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you got to understand this. The ratings are not going to go down because what other outlet do you have? I mean, this is the reason why replays are so prominent, and they've always been prominent. What do you think a highlight show is? A highlight show plays. It's not a live sporting event.
Yeah.
We tune in for the live sporting event, but if you look at the trend of how television has gotten in the last 3 to 4 years, Charlton, it's all about highlight shows.
Yeah.
Even the NFL Network has a show where they show the highlights of the games where you don't have to sit down and watch an entire game. They bring you the big plays as they're occurring or just after they occurred in a game. So we've become a society of instant gratification. We don't want to sit down and watch 60 minutes of something when we can get it all condensed down to 5 minutes. If you recall, years ago, ESPN came out with a show called Prime Time, where they came out on Sunday and they showed the highlights of the games, where, you know, you only had 3 games that were being played across the networks that you could see on Sunday. But when you watch Prime Time with Chris Berman and Tom Jackson, you got a chance to see all the highlights of all the games. So it felt like you were watching the game live, even though those games had finished hours earlier, Charlton. But you had that feeling that you were still part of that event that just occurred. And so as we look at events not being showed live now, Charlton, that's not going to drop the ratings. We don't have the live ratings, but we have the ratings because when you have the option of watching Desperate Housewives or Real Housewives or what it is, or a game from 2008, you're going to watch that game from 2008 because it brings back memories. You can remember what you were doing during that time. It's just like when Doug Williams won the Super Bowl for the Washington Redskins.
Yeah.
One of the most uplifting moments in African-American history in America. And I'm not talking about just sports. I'm talking about African-American history. When you talk to black males, Charlton, over the age of 40, they can generally tell you what they were doing that day when Doug Williams kicked the Denver Broncos' butt down in San Diego, because it meant so much to them.
Yeah.
And they could go back and watch that game over and over. It's not about ratings. It's about the history that was made from that event. And that's what you have to recognize with all the sports now. And this is the reason why the sports programs show the highlights. When I was a kid growing up, there was a show called Wide World of Sports, where they took the week of sports, Charlton, and wrapped it into a weekend show. But you stayed there for that weekend show to see what occurred throughout that entire week. And even growing up, when you had the 11 o'clock news came on, it was only about sports highlights, Charlton, that they ran for 3 to 5 minutes. But it gave you the daily spins in sports from around the world. So where we are now is where we were 40 years ago in America, Charlton. All we've done is taken a step back to a time when things were less complicated.
Yeah, a lot like Groundhog Day. And speaking of complicated, you just picked my mind to something I want to ask you, because I love just having real conversation. When POTUS had a conference, I believe over the weekend, had a press conference, it was a phone call with professional sports commissioners, and he wanted to get sports back as soon as possible. And for all of our dumb guys that told me that sports and politics don't mix, the president of the United States of America, that's why we call him POTUS, he called the sports commissioners. He didn't call the news programs and ask you, hey, can we get more news? He called together the sports commissioners of major sports, Big C, from the NFL to the NBA, baseball, soccer, hockey, even WWE, and was asking them, can we get the sports leagues going again? Is this the same guy that wanted to fire all the SOBs for standing up for their rights, Big C, your thoughts?
But this is the same guy, Charlton, would not include the health professionals on that call or ask the health professionals from all of these things. You have to understand, every sports professional team employs doctors, Charlton. And who in the hell you think those doctors listen to? They listen to the medical experts that are around the United States. They don't listen to the president as far as the health of the players that they're responsible for, Charlton. They're listening to the career health professionals, because that's what those doctors are. They are not going to put those players out there in peril, nor are those players going to go out there and put themselves in peril. One of the things you have to understand, the next big league that's coming up, even though baseball has been postponed, everybody keeps talking about the NFL. When we talked about this new collective bargain agreement that just went into place, Charlton, where, everyone was, scattered about how close the vote was, and we talked about 20% of the players in the NFL make 80% of the salary cap. 20% make 80% of the salary cap. So when you think about, on average, Charlton, about 60% of the players on every NFL roster operate just at or above minimum salary that they could make. So when that $100,000 increase came in, that was Christmas Day for them. So they were going to take it. And so it still comes down to the health professionals. Regardless of you wanting to have this mental release for America, and even your president understands how important sports are in this country. The NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, MLS soccer, the NHL, all of those leagues, Charlton, are not going to play. Because can you imagine the lawsuits that would be put in place if this pandemic has not been curbed and wiped away? And just think about one player catches it once a season starts, Charlton. Everything closes up and everybody gets sued. So I don't think that these owners are there trying to appease the president, saying, okay, we're going to get it started, and all of a sudden after one game we got 3 players test positive. Who's getting sued? The owner's going to get sued, Charlton, not the president. Hey, I didn't know nothing. That was their call. As he's constantly saying he's going to play dummy. Well, he's not playing dummy. He's just being himself. But he's not going to have anything to do with it.
I think it's interesting, as you just brought up, as he talked to the commissioners, Roger Goodell for the NFL, Rob Manfred, Major League Baseball, Adam Silver, NBA, Gary Bettman, NHL, and also Major League Soccer, WNBA, WWE Wrestling, the PGA Tour, Ultimate Fighting Championships. Could you imagine he wants to talk to Ultimate Fighting guys about where we can get guys in the ring and get them beaten up again? See, that make any sense?
Well, not much that he says makes sense. If you listen to him during his, pseudo conferences that he's having, and he doesn't want the medical experts to speak. And that's the problem that I have. You have medical experts, and he made the statement that he wasn't a doctor,
right?
But he doesn't want you to listen to the doctors. He doesn't want the doctors to speak. He wants to keep talking about how great the economy was, and how he's doing good. And he wants people to thank him for all the great job that he's done.
Yeah.
And he wants to sit up and say, well, the testing, he was left with bad testing equipment. We had never had a corona pandemic prior to him becoming president.
Yeah.
So where were the corona tests at, Charlton?
Yeah.
This came out in 2020, not 2016. So he wants to blame this on the past administration, saying that their tests were outdated. How the hell can you have an outdated test and you've never had the pandemic?
Yeah. Well, I think that's his way of covering up that they fired and defunded the Centers for Disease Control that the Obama administration had set up.
Well, he disbanded there was a pandemic, and I can't think of the wording for it right now, Charlton, a commission that we had in this country. He disbanded this. Obama had set this up under SARS. If you remember SARS disease, Bush and Obama, and then we had the Ebola.
Yeah. So
Bush and Obama had this pandemic commission set up. Trump came into office and disbanded this.
Well, he had to build that wall.
In early 2017, said there's not going to be any pandemics in this country, even though Obama warned him against it.
Yeah.
He said, no, I don't want anything that was left with your administration's name on it.
Yeah.
I will put the American public at risk. And that's what he has done. He has constantly put the American public at risk, and he will not let the experts speak. And I think this is a shortcoming of the media. And every time somebody in the media tries to call him out, he cuts them off, saying that they're mean and nasty. They need to be nice to him.
Yeah.
And it's fake news what they're giving, even though they ask him a serious question, and he won't. And I recall yesterday somebody wanted to ask Dr. Fauci a question that would contradict what Trump had said, and he said, "No, I've already answered the question. No, you move to the next question. You know, he's not going to answer that."
Yeah.
He shut off the medical experts from the American people. He does not want the medical experts to speak to the American people because they contradict what he says. They're not in line to say, yes, Mr. President, we love you, Mr. President, you're doing a great job, Mr. President. They're just sitting there telling the truth, which is you're lying to the public, Mr. President.
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, if you think about it, around the world with coronavirus, just some facts that can come up from coronavirus.gov, there have been over 1,341,000 confirmed cases, 74,000 fatalities around the world, and in the United States, over 366,000 confirmed cases.
What's the population in the United States?
About 350 million or so.
Okay. You know how many people have been tested in the United States?
Not that many.
About 2 million people as of today has been tested.
Yeah.
So they're telling you, okay, we've tested 2 million people in America. That means 348 million people, Charlton, have not been tested.
Yeah.
So when you're saying that you're on top of a disease, you have it under control, and you have not tested 1% of the population, think about that. You've tested 1/3 of 1% of the population of the actually 1/4 of 1% of the population of the United States, and you say that you're on top of this disease?
Yeah.
And I think it was early March that he said, okay, we have 11 cases. It'll be over with real quick.
Yeah.
It'll disappear. Boom, it'll be gone like a miracle. It'll be over with in a week or two.
Yeah.
This is what he told the population of America and the world, Charlton, just back in the first part of March, that it was over, that it was a Democratic hoax. Now we have over 10,000 deaths in America. And he's out there pushing some medication, Charlton, that has not been proven by the FDA or the top medical experts in America to say that it will help people. But he keeps touting this drug, Charlton, that no one has tested or gotten approval for, but he has his appointees saying the drug works, but he won't let the medical experts say, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, and that's a dangerous thing. Even if anyone goes into any medical or medicine cabinet, they put labels on a prescription for a reason. You can't just take something without the advice of the medical. I mean, that to me, follow your doctors and follow science. That makes so much sense. I want to just ask you one more thought on this, and I really mean this for guys like Hannity and Rush Limbaugh. I think Rush Limbaugh has cancer or something. I'm sure he reads the label on his medication before he takes it. And if the administration had their way, he wouldn't have access to medication because he'd have a pre-existing condition and no one would insure him. And that's real news. It's a shame that they stand on TV every day and they say we want to help the American people, but we're going to strip away the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. It just doesn't make any sense. But I want to ask you this thought. I know every governor and everybody has to do their own, but it's unclear at this time if and when they'll lift this. We don't know. Again, it's based on science. But I'm really appreciate Governor Gavin Newsom in California because they started this shelter in place, and I think the mayor of San Francisco, her name is Libby, is they have this shelter in place first. And San Francisco seems to be a little bit more under control than maybe even New York City or some of the western or the eastern states. It started up in Seattle when they started talking about the cases hitting the United States. So I really appreciate this shutdown here. Has that inconvenience? I guess it's a dumb question. I'd rather be shut down than in a hospital, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, shelter in place has inconvenienced the entire United States, Charlton. But it goes back to what I said, regardless of what these governors have done about shelter in place or even the national government has done about shelter in place. When you've only tested 1/4 of 1% of the population, yes, you can stem the tide because you haven't checked people.
Yeah.
So those are false numbers when you say you stem the tide. If you increase the testing, if you go out and test 10% of the American population, Charlton, that means you've tested, 35 million people. Now you're going to see a huge spike.
Yeah.
But you can't get a spike unless you test people. If you're not testing people, if you look at the percentage of deaths, Charlton, versus the number of people who've been tested and the number of people who have coronavirus tested positive, then there's no curve that has been met. I mean, the realization is in the numbers. They keep giving you the backwards numbers.
Yeah.
They keep telling you, okay, we've tested 2 million people. We have, this many thousands of people tested positive. We have this many thousand deaths. But they don't tell you we have this many million people have not been tested.
Yeah.
At some point, you have to be honest with people. And I think that people get a false sense of reality because they're not telling them in actuality what has not been done. They're telling you what they've done, but they're not telling you what they have not done.
Yeah.
It's just like the president saying that nefarious things are going on at these hospitals, that he believes that the hospital workers are stealing the supplies because he cannot believe that they're going through so much equipment.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, while I was in the hospital, I spent 8 days in the hospital, Charlton. I was checked on every hour by at least 4 hospital staff that were in my room doing various things to me that they had to do. Every time these hospital workers came into the room, Charlton, 4 people every hour.
Yeah.
Every hour, Charlton, they changed all of the garments that they had. They took off all of the protective gear that they put into the trash. So we're thinking about every hour, Charlton, 24 hours a day. Do the math on it, Charlton. They use 80-plus pieces of equipment every day just in my room.
Yeah.
Now, you think about all the other people that were in the hospital and intensive care and all these ICU units, Charlton, how much equipment they used every time they walked into these people.
Yeah.
So the president being such a lowlife to say that these hospital workers are doing nefarious things with the equipment that they're needing to save their lives as well as the patient lives, and to have his followers believe something like that, how stupid can you be as a country? This is the reason why I'm saying is that they're not telling the truth. Don't tell me how many people that have tested positive. Tell me how many people you have refused to test, Charlton.
Yeah, that's very well said, Big C. I know when you're telling people the hospitals is where you want to go if you get sick, but they're stealing stuff and you can't get the test. It doesn't make any sense, but I know Sean Hannity probably believes everything the man says. I want to just get one more thought on this because to me it's so important. We want to believe anyone in a position of authority, but if someone's lying to you, there's a book called The Boy Who Cried Wolf. A lot of people on Fox News have not read that book, Big C. They should read it. That's why the boy was devoured by the wolf in the end. But what's this thing again about reaching out? We have GM laying people off. There's a lot of the airlines are laying people off. The hotels are laying people off. Why is he calling a sports league? And with predominantly African-American men, the NFL and NBA, he wants to get kick-started right away. Why is he putting his efforts into that as opposed to GM, as opposed to the airline companies, in this $6 trillion stimulus package that people still have not gotten the money yet? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, who knows when these people are going to get the money? The people can't get the bank loans in small businesses, Charlton. The banks have stopped taking applications. They don't know how to funnel the money. This whole thing is a scam because he did not have people in place, Charlton, that could orchestrate this. You need to put logistics people in charge of things when you're talking about dealing with money and equipment like this, Charlton. Not the people that you appoint. You need to have career logistic people, military staff, Charlton, people in finance going out handling these things. He did not know how to put these people in place. This is not a real estate deal that he thought he was trying to deal. And that's what people in real estate say. Don't worry about the deal. It'll be okay. All we got to do is sign the papers and we'll worry about the rest later.
Just sign the documentation.
That's his mindset in dealing with the American public.
Yeah.
But as he's going to these sports leagues, Charlton, about we got to get the league started, Charlton, he's not going to the American public saying we got to get people back to work.
Yeah.
You can say have any sports league you want playing a game, Charlton, but if you can't afford a damn ticket to get into the game, what's the use of having the league going out playing?
Yeah.
You think about that $1,200 stimulus check is going to get you into what NBA game? It's not going to get you into but one NBA game with one of your kids. That's it. And you're not going to be able to buy any damn popcorn while you're there. So as the president is aloof of what's going on in America, Charlton, and he's getting bad advice from all his people, well, what he's getting is praise from his people.
Yeah.
You're doing a great job, Mr. President. We thank you, Mr. President. You're doing wonderful. We don't know where this country would be without you, Mr. President. Yeah, we know where it would be. It would be in great hands if you weren't there.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's over 10 million people that file for unemployment that still can't get through, and he contacts 12 sports commissioners as opposed to the owners of small business or the governors in all 50 states and saying, how can we get money directly into the people who live in your state immediately? He's calling professional sports teams.
There has been over 25 million Americans filed for unemployment in the last 17 days.
Wow.
Okay? 25 million Americans filed for unemployment in the last 17 days. We're getting at a rate of 2 million Americans a day filing for unemployment benefits. And nobody has received any unemployment benefits yet.
Nobody.
Those stimulus checks, Charlton, may not be in the mail until the end of the month.
Yeah.
So as we have a backlog in politics in Washington, D.C., and we don't have any adult in the room running what needs to be going on, and he's talking about China, what's going on in China and other places around the world, he spends less time addressing the layman American citizen than he does addressing China and trade, Charlton.
Well, did you hear his son-in-law, Kushner, that said that those PPEs are ours? He said like they have an underground bunker and he's going to keep them instead of give them to the hospitals.
Well, what they do, Charlton, they send them out to the one of the things that the general public didn't understand is that as American health workers were fighting, trying to get supplies, our national government was allowing supplies to go around the world, medical supplies, the same things that we had to go buy from China. We were selling to other countries around the world for profit. We were putting Americans' lives at risk for profit for private industry that the president gave those huge tax cuts to so they could sell these healthcare garments, Charlton, around the world, whether they were face masks, garments, gloves, and all these other things. They were being sold for profit around the world. This is something that the president allowed that he will not talk about, is that the things, the supplies that our hospital chains needed in America, the president and his administration were allowing them to be sold around the world to the highest bidder.
Wow, that's incredible. Big C, in the next 3 minutes, you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Speaker.com. The apps that I really love are by Google or Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic from 3,000 miles away, and he will do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate that. Also, still waiting for Gavin Newsom's approval. You're looking to bring on 100 real estate brokers to list their properties on TV. McDonald's is doing it. Car dealerships doing it. And sports teams, when they get back in action, according to Dabu Sweeney, pretty soon. And really looking forward to that. Big C, I know in just a few minutes left, Manchester City soccer player apologized for hiring 2 sex workers to come to his home 2 days before telling the public to stay away from large gatherings. How will dating sites like eHarmony survive when you got to stand 6 feet away from anybody you meet online? 6 feet.
Well, that means you can afford to bring them to you and you don't have to go to them.
This good old boy was telling he couldn't care less about coronavirus. He's going to party with some women that want to provide some entertainment. He was going to tell them not to do what it takes to enjoy life. I know it's all fair in love and war, but in the next few minutes, I know, number one, I'm glad you're feeling better. I was saying you're out mining for gold. And I was saying, be careful. Don't tell the Europeans where the gold is, because they'll take it and say they discovered it first, Big C. You know how that goes. But I want to just ask you, in closing, what advice would you give people when they are being told, whatever they're hearing, they got to trust science. But what advice would you give people about coming through it? No one can say how not to get it other than wash your hands and wear a face mask. How do you come through it, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you come through it with the healthcare workers and having health coverage. That everybody who has survived this pandemic thus far, Charlton, has been at the mercy of the healthcare workers, and I praise them every day. You cannot say enough about these great people. As our politicians and everybody want to fight in America, and we want to talk about sports teams and sports leagues and who's making what. When they had this bill passed, Charlton, for this relief, our healthcare workers should be receiving hazard pay in America.
Immediately.
They should be receiving double the pay that they're getting. They go to work daily, tirelessly, Charlton, and no one thinks about it. Everybody's talking about who's making what, who's signing what big contract. The healthcare workers, Charlton, are not being paid enough, and they're putting their lives on the line every day. And we've lost several dozen of them, Charlton, to this pandemic, who have lost their lives out there saving other lives. Even though they take an oath when they get into healthcare, Charlton, is about helping the public. They have lost their lives. Their families have lost wives, husbands, parents, brothers, sisters, daughters, nieces, nephews. Their families have lost those people, Charlton. And so we can't do enough or say enough or help those people enough. Those are the people who need help, even beyond the general public, is our first responders and healthcare workers. And those are who you have to think about. I mean, we all want to find ways to keep ourselves safe in this society. And I think keeping yourself out of harm's way, if you don't put yourself out there in this, Charlton, then, you limit your exposure to this, because everyone talks about washing your hands. This is called a pathogen, Charlton. Why do you think they tell people to wear masks? It's called a pathogen. It's in the air. It's not on the doorknobs. It's in the air. When I was in the hospital, I was always told to look and talk the other way from the person that was aiding me. It wasn't about them touching my hand. It was about us changing passages through the air, Charlton.
Yeah, and that's important to know. Washing our hands is one thing, but you got to protect how it gets into your body. And when you're in the public's eye, when you come into contact with a lot of people in business, it's just out there. I want to just mention two more quick things. Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, part of the 2020 induction class into the Hall of Fame. And then also the final thing I'll mention before I get your thoughts is I just appreciate having health care, because as they're giving you a speech every day, an update from the White House, and they're in court as we speak trying to get rid of Obamacare, which means that if you have a pre-existing condition, you cannot be denied. And I see some of my former sports brethren on TV playing basketball and having whatever garbage. They should be doing something that's real, advocating like what we're doing. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, what we talked about earlier in the show, the potential of college football not being played this year. If you look at all of those southern governors who refused to put the stay-in-place order at home in their states, left their states open, Charlton, to the spread of this pandemic. And as this pandemic continues to spread down in those southern states and those numbers increase, that means that colleges cannot reopen. And if those colleges cannot reopen, Charlton, then there will be no college football in 2020.
And that means no more black labor, at least for this college season. Everyone, please stay safe. It's so important. Stay healthy, wealthy, and wise. And follow science every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. You can follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, at Big C Sports. has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and the good old boys down south, as we tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports Show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.